In the year 2061, Japan had collapsed due to economic policies and an aging population. Japan became a tempting prize for capitalist nations. They scrambled and tore at each other for control. Humanoid weapons called Amai were deployed into the war. Japan's situation was worse than ever. This is Sipa. He and his friends found the remains of an Amai. They quickly scavenged what they could use and left. Together, they discussed what to use the parts for. Sipa didn't reveal his plans, even though he took the most. Later, Sipa was dropped off at his home. Just then, the group heard a brawl between some Japanese people and foreign soldiers. Sipa ignored it and went inside. Because in this era, being born Japanese was like being Jewish. They were looked down upon, and even with talent or money, it was hard to find a job. Sipa wondered what he was living for. Frustrated, Sipa went back to the mountains to search for something. This time, he went alone, not inviting the other three, because he didn't know their names or where they lived. He only knew them through a robot enthusiast group. For him, maintaining a relationship like this was perfectly fine. Sipa then went to retrieve the Amai part he had hidden earlier. He wandered around until evening before returning home. This time, he heard someone calling for help. Curiosity and cautiousness. Sipa took out his military flashlight and slowly approached the source of the sound. And behind the foliage was a sphere. It made a sound that introduced itself as Gay, a conscious AI with a life of its own. Sipa didn't want any trouble, so he started to leave. But Gay had already guessed his thoughts, scolded him, and even knew Sipa had hidden the communication device from the Amai. Gay begged Sipa to save it because its battery was dying. Then it urged him to hide because someone was coming. Soon after, a military vehicle approached. They found Sipa and questioned what he was doing at this hour. Sipa calmly replied that he was camping. They didn't believe him, as this was an area with the Amai wreckage after the battle, and they had detected someone stealing equipment. Two soldiers requested to check Sipa's ID. He was an orphan, living off his parents' assets and a stipend. Despite his clean record, they still forced him to open his backpack for inspection. Only when they found nothing did they let him go. When everything was clear, Sipa returned for Gay and headed to an abandoned workshop. He had already claimed this place as a secret hideout, and behind the secured door was an Amai. He began charging Guy's battery. The AI was curious. Did you assemble this Amai all by yourself? He recounted how he had found this workshop, looking like a relic. Upon checking, he found all the tools still there. Sipa also spent quite some time trying to unlock the secret room, and when he opened it, the Amai was already inside. However, this thing had a strange structure, missing its central control unit. And so, Sipa had been researching this thing ever since. It was the only joy Sipa had in these tumultuous times. Gay expressed respect for Sipa's hobby. He was surprised when it asked a question he had never considered. What would Sipa do after this Amai was operational? He remained silent. In response to his silence, Gay stated it was fine if he was just doing it for a hobby. Because back when the border wars happened, people still bought water and popcorn just to watch the robots fight, all for their own enjoyment and interest. Sipa cut in. He activated the jamming signal before leaving Gay to charge there. As the door closed, Gay sprang into action. It scanned the entire workshop and controlled the machinery to prepare something. It had been 3 days since Sipa left. It rained continuously, making him very worried. He feared Gay would drain all the power in the workshop. The next day, the military caught Sipa's friends trying to modify a vehicle with Amai parts. The commander labeled all three as terrorists and showed a picture of Sipa, demanding information or threatening them with death. Meanwhile, Sipa was repairing his headphones when Gay intercepted a signal, ordering him to run from his house immediately. Just then, the soldiers stormed in. Not finding him, they ordered a check of all surrounding cameras. Sipa ran to the workshop and saw the Amai completed by Gay. He didn't have long to be amazed, as the soldiers had tracked him there. Through the camera, they saw the Oceanic Amai and Sipa's 3 friends held hostage. The commander demanded he come out, suspecting him of being a terrorist. The 3 friends tried to explain they were just street boys who liked customizing cars. But he ignored them, pointing his gun at them, forcing Sipa out. He intended to comply. But Gay spoke up. Do you want to be caught and rot in prison for the rest of your life? Or fight back and find a way to overcome these difficulties? Accept being a fish trapped in a cage. Or be a fish that leaps over the dragon's gate and becomes a dragon. If you trust me, then pilot this thing. Without hesitation, he chose to pilot the Amai with Gay. The commander, seeing no movement, began firing. Sipa got into the Amai and inserted Gay like a key. After some analysis, this Amai was named Kempo. The retinal scan began, and Sipa saw everything outside. Gay appeared in a cuter form. After getting used to the cockpit, Sipa had the Amai transform into its humanoid form. Following Guy's instructions, Kempo burst out, astonishing everyone. Sipa flew up and punched an Amai. Then he grabbed it and threw it into the other one. However, the enemy fired back, forcing him to retreat and take cover. They continuously unleashed bullets, putting him in a difficult spot. Another one jumped behind, creating a pincer attack on Kempo. At this point, Gay told Sipa to use his finishing move. With burning eyes, it urged Sipa to shout the skill name with maximum coolness. As both Amai charged, Sipa yelled, "Iron Cannon," then used his weapon to pierce one. He quickly grabbed the one attacking from behind and slammed its arm into the other. This was the first time Sipa felt truly alive. Immediately after, a soldier took Sipa's 3 friends hostage, demanding his surrender. Seeing this, Gay told Sipa that it could handle it. It then changed its voice and spoke. Those 3 are just Sipa's tools. You use them to collect parts to repair Kempo. Now that it's complete, they're no longer useful. Furthermore, Gay directly insulted the commander. He had lost track of the real terrorist and was arresting and punishing innocent civilians. How shameful. After saying that, both of them left. Because of that powerful provocation, now both of them had to hide and sneak around like this. Sipa stopped to check Kempo. He checked his phone and saw he was wanted for terrorism, but he was too hungry to care. Sipa asked what they needed to do next. Gay stated they had to cross the Seto Inland Sea and enter Okuyama. Being outside the Oceanic Forces jurisdiction, they would attract less attention. If they were still pursued, they would live in exile. It sounded reasonable, so he took a nap to regain his strength. The next morning, Sipa had to camouflage Kempo because Gay had announced it needed rest. After a day of processing a huge amount of information, it needed to sleep to avoid overload. Once camouflaged, Sipa went to find something to eat, as he hadn't eaten since yesterday. He approached a garden, full of various vegetables and fruits. He thought, well, I'm already wanted as a criminal, so committing a little more crime won't hurt. So he approached the vegetable garden and picked a tomato. Just as he was about to take a bite, the garden owner arrived, holding a sickle, making Sipa panic and apologize, bowing his head to the ground. The garden owner looked at him without saying anything. He then told Sipa to help him, and he would feed him. Afterwards, under the guidance of the kind owner, Sipa harvested many kinds of vegetables. At noon, he got to eat cool, spring-soaked tomatoes. After eating, the owner continued to ask him to help sow seeds. He worked until evening. Despite that, Sipa wasn't tired and even felt happy with these new experiences. Understandably, since he always lived in the city, experiences like these were very precious. The owner had witnessed everything and invited Sipa back to his home. His wife came out to greet him. The owner asked his wife to prepare a meal for their guest. Sipa happily agreed and told Sipa to take a bath first. After bathing, the couple invited him to a lavish meal. Sipa didn't hold back and began to eat. As he took the first bite, tears involuntarily fell, because it was completely different from the fast food he always ate. It made Sipa very happy. After eating, Sipa drank tea to cleanse his palate. Just then, the TV broadcast Sipa's wanted announcement, and before his speechless confusion, the owner said he once had a son. But unfortunately, he died fighting in the border war. Father and son had promised to go fishing together when he returned, but it seemed it wouldn't happen. That fishing boat had been left unused by him until now. He said if Sipa needed it, he would give it to him. And he knew Sipa wasn't a terrorist, because no terrorist would timidly apologize in the field when caught stealing. On the contrary, he helped him in the garden. He said that in these chaotic times, one must not lose faith in humanity. So, he would give Sipa that faith. He even affirmed that as long as Sipa was here, nothing would happen to him. A surge of emotion and gratitude filled Sipa when he heard that. He kept thanking them. To dispel the unease, the wife said she would check if his clothes were done washing. Sipa offered to help. Just then, the doorbell rang. The owner told Sipa to hide. Then he went out to meet the town's police chief. He came to check for any hidden terrorists. The owner, with firm eyes, asserted that no one was there. Nevertheless, the police officer saw Sipa's shoes. But due to the owner's reputation, the police officer turned a blind eye. Gay contacted Sipa. It had heard everything and knew the police officer had overlooked it. However, both it and Sipa knew the elderly couple would be in danger if they stayed here. So the next morning, he left with a farewell letter. First, he was very grateful to them for saving him. He also thanked them for the meal and their warm words. He also asked permission to borrow their boat. He would return when everything was settled. Furthermore, Sipa messed up everything in the house to make it look like he had attacked the couple, preventing them from being suspected. After that, Sipa connected the boat to Gay. Both began their journey. Still, Sipa felt uneasy as his crimes accumulated, things he hadn't actually done. Gay confidently said it was okay. No matter how many crimes were piled on him, as long as he was exonerated, it would be fine. Hearing that, Sipa felt relieved and departed. Gay announced they were only a few minutes from the other shore, and ahead lay the fiercely contested border war zone. Before preparing, Gay announced they were surrounded by Asian forces. They had set up an interception formation. Gay scanned the entire front and identified at least 12 mechs. Running was no longer an option, so the only way was to charge straight ahead. Gay said Sipa had defeated the Oceanic forces. If he could take on Asia now, he'd be a hero. Although this wasn't what Sipa wanted, the thought of battle ignited his spirit. When the Asian forces opened fire, Kempo leaped high into the air. Then, following Guy's calculations, it landed on a nearby bridge. Both continued to advance. Kempo charged, taking down an Amai. Sipa used it as a shield and pushed both into the water. Excitement surged through Sipa. He continued to charge, taking down to more Ame. The commander was astonished by Kempo's agile movements. What about Sipa? Gay identified for long-range shooters. Locking onto Kempo, it dashed forward, kicked to enemies away, then snatched a gun to shoot an incoming Amai. But the weapon required identity verification to be used. No problem if it can't be used. Sipa simply bashed the gun's stock into the Amai's head. However, the enemy brought in more reinforcements. Both were surrounded on all four sides. It calculated an escape route. It detected a high-capacity battery nearby. Just a spark would make it explode. Seizing the opportunity as the enemy opened fire, Sipa had Kempo throw some batteries into the hail of bullets, causing them to explode. Using the explosion as cover, both sped away. But the Asian forces kept firing, hitting Kempo's leg and immobilizing it. They immediately surrounded and restrained Sipa. Then, they continuously fired at the cockpit to destroy it and kill Sipa. However, Kempo was too sturdy for the initial barrage. The commander ordered continued firing until Sipa was killed. But just as they were about to fire again, a sniper took down one of them from afar. The Asian army immediately became vigilant, scanning their surroundings. However, the long distance across the mountain range had locked onto all targets. Each bullet fired brought down an Amai. When all had fallen, the pilot on the other side contacted Sipa. He provided the location Sipa needed to go to and gave him the password. Then, the pilot fired smoke rounds, creating an opportunity for Kempo to escape. It was a smoke bomb to jam their systems, so the Asian army couldn't pinpoint Sipa's location. Afterwards, he met his rescuer. He expressed his gratitude and introduced himself. At the same time, he introduced Gay. However, it seemed annoyed that there was another AI similar to itself here, and the pilot's AI greeted both of them. Then all forgot into a transport vehicle and left. The other AI introduced itself as Key, and the pilot as Gazin. Gay was scanning their surroundings to identify their path. He explained this road was built before the border war. It was a remnant of a highway project. It was built with private funds and in secret, so the enemy wouldn't know, and they could travel safely. It was Sipa's turn. He asked, "Who is Gassen?" With a taciturn and gruff demeanor. He explained, the Japanese were piloting Amai and forming their own army, with the goal of restoring Japan. Gassi called his organization Iyadagarasu. Gay said they were terrorists Sipa had encountered all this time. He was then led to IATAS camp. There, he met the maintenance crew. Despite calling him flimsy, they still accepted the job of repairing Kempo. Then, another person approached. The person introduced herself as Risa. Key and Gay then led him to meet the captain of IATAS Squad 2. After a brief introduction, Sipa was questioned by Kamai, but it felt more like an interrogation. Questions like whether he had teammates or if he assembled Kempo himself. She even asked if Gay was programmed by Sipa. Despite being a bit bewildered by the questions, Sipa calmly answered, Kempo was already assembled when he found it. He just installed and repaired it, not knowing if it would even work. As for Gay, he found it in the forest. When he inserted Gay, it activated. After some discussion, Kamai said Kempo was IATA's property. It also had two other siblings, developed from an Amai named Johan, currently controlled by Gassi. Kamai added that the reason he couldn't activate it the first time he found it was because a part was missing. It was supposed to be delivered to Kempo soon, but the pilot and AI controlling it were attacked. As a result, Kempo remained dormant until Sipa revived it. After beating around the bush, Gay irritably said IATA would take Kempo back later. But Kamai said that would be too unfair to Sipa, so the squad captain had a better offer for him. That was to join them. They weren't terrorists, as the news claimed. They were insurgents. They didn't engage in extremist actions, so they weren't terrorists. Furthermore, since he could repair and fight with Kempo, they thought Sipa was a great fit to join. He hesitated, knowing he would definitely have to kill people. Gazin was angry. Kempo is not a toy. It's a weapon of war. He then showed Sipa a video of many Japanese people being massacred. And Sipa had something that could save them, yet he was too cowardly to act. Seeing Sipa's still unconvinced face, Gazin angrily left. Kumai hoped he would overlook it, because Gazin's father was determined to restore Japan. But he died before he could accomplish it. Gazin's gruff actions were also because he wanted to fulfill his father's dying wish. As soon as possible, returning to Sipa's decision, Kumai said it was fine if he refused. They could help him restore his citizenship and return to a normal life, living under a different name and identity. In return, he would have to give Kempo back. Listening to the conditions, Sipa fell silent, then said he would think about it. He went outside and sat down. At this moment, Risa came to talk to him. Sipa pressed her. Why did you join the insurgency? She recounted that she once had a family, but they all died in a traffic accident. The cause of it was an Asian military vehicle, but due to diplomatic immunity, they were innocent. They even blamed her family, claiming damages to the military, forcing them to pay compensation. Thinking back, she still hated them deeply, and she was sure there were many in Japan who felt the same way she did. That's why she joined to restore Japan. The people here were the same. However, Sipa had no reason to join. His parents died of illness unrelated to the military. At first, he thought assembling Kempo was just a hobby, but when fighting with Kempo and Gay, the clash of steel made his body boil with excitement. But then, when facing death, he was terrified. He recoiled, recalling that moment. But then, a reassuring touch from Risa. She honestly admitted she was sent to persuade him to join IATA. But thinking back, if her younger brother were in this situation, she couldn't advise him to join either. She would tell him to run far away from this place, to live a peaceful life. She wanted him to value himself more. How can a person be happy if no one is by their side? Remembering what he had experienced in the elderly couple, he made a decision. Kamai announced that headquarters had sent word that Asian forces had increased security. After they rescued Kempo, they would temporarily halt their plan to cut enemy supply lines and return to HQ. As for Sipa's situation, Risa wasn't sure if he would join. Gazin was still annoyed by Sipa's weakness. The next day, he called Sipa to wake up for training. He showed Sipa the day's training schedule. Without giving him a chance to refuse, he started training, making Sipa run after him. He showed Risa the accessories that would be equipped on Kempo. Sipa was exhausted from training. Gazin said today was just the beginning for him, then left. In the evening, Sipa lay listening to Gay ramble on about Kempo's magnificent power, but he was too tired and fell asleep. The next day, he was dragged away by Gazin for training again. That night, he was too tired to eat. Everyone around them witnessed it all and offered their support. Someone even made him a special drink. After drinking it, he went to sleep. Immediately after, he was called awake for training again. Ki witnessed Kempo's completion day by day. Sipa also gradually improved himself. Today, Gazen let him off early. As he returned to change, Risa called him out to see Kempo. It had been equipped with new armor. Additionally, it had swords and cannons mounted on its back. Sipa was astonished by the professional's craftsmanship. After discussing a few things with Risa, both went to a nearby stream to bathe. Risa casually stripped in front of him. Faced with his awkwardness, she pulled his hand and jumped straight in. The cool stream's sensation washed away his worries. Afterwards, they chatted. Risa said they would be leaving for Hiroshima tomorrow and asked if he had made his decision. He said he was still afraid to fight, but in the days he spent with everyone, he knew they weren't bad people, so he would still follow them. He wanted to learn and fight alongside Kempo. Risa was very happy and patted his head. He then repeated his decision to Gay. It said it would always support him because he saved it. Risa reported Sipa's choice to Kamai. The next day, Gay and Sipa tested the new Kempo. Thanks to everyone's upgrades and maintenance, it moved faster and more flexibly. Just one slash cleanly cut a large rock. After the test run, Sipa got out of Kempo and met Gazen again. He expressed his astonishment at Kempo's upgrades. Then Gazen took Kempo for a test drive. Gazen needed to get used to Kempo in case Sipa died, and Sipa should do the same. The two then had another sparring match using each other's Amai, and Gazen's Amai was named Johan, under Key's guidance. Their friendly match was quite balanced. Even though Gay talked a lot, annoying Gazen, he calmly dodged every barrage from Sipa. Key humbly advised Sipa to switch weapons more flexibly when his opponent knew how to counter him. But Sipa was worried that if he fought too seriously, Kempo would get scratched. While he was distracted, Gazen closed in. Immediately, Ki told Sipa to switch weapons to a shield to defend. Next, he pulled out a short knife, knocking Kempo's weapon away, then pointed his gun at it, but Gazen managed to grab another blade and strike Johan's shoulder. The result of this match was a draw. Gazen also accepted Sipa as a pilot. Just then, the camp was attacked again. They were being approached by a black Amai. It targeted the vehicles transporting Amai parts and destroyed them. After finishing that, it targeted the insurgents. Just as its giant arm was about to come down, Kempo blocked it. The two began to engage in combat. Gay sensed something, noting the Amai's glowing hot arm. It had no data on that, so they had to be careful. Just then, Risa arrived to provide support. After firing only a few shots, the Amai instantly warped to her and delivered a single blow, sending her to meet her family. Risa's sudden death left Sipa unable to react. Gay told him to turn back and dodge the black Amai's attack. Kumai called, instructing both of them to buy time for him to evacuate everyone. As for Gazen, realizing this was the Amai that killed his father, he immediately attacked, ignoring Key's protest. At the same time, his memories resurfaced. That day, Gazen had asked his father if he could pilot Johan instead of the training mechas before. His father agreed, as there were no signs of danger. But not long after he left, a black Amai was reported to have attacked Gazen's father's squad. When he ran to find his father, he saw it had killed him. Gazen, filled with rage, swore to avenge his father. Key forced him to calm down, as his stats were unstable for controlling Johan. The black Amai attacked Gazen with its weapon. Kempo quickly came to his rescue. Nevertheless, Gazen was still in a state of panic, telling Sipa to get lost. At this moment, Kumai called, urging him to cooperate to fight that Amai. It was very strong. If both lost, everyone here would die. Ki also reassured him, helping him to stabilize. But the problem was that both Ayas, Gay and Ki, had no data on that Amai to formulate a battle strategy. The only information they had was that this Amai attacked everywhere it went. Asian and North American forces also suffered heavy losses, and they called it Ghost. Ghost went first with a powerful lightning-fast attack, repelling Kempo, followed by a combo attack continuously on Sipa. Gazen fired supporting shots. Ghost jumped back, then used the insurgent army's own gun to attack. This confused Sipa, as it could use it without identity verification. Ki said that was what made Ghost so overpowered. In the battle with Gazen's father, it lost an arm. Then it took another Amai's arm, attached it, and made it its own. It continued to move while being targeted by Johan. Kempo charged forward to intercept it. Gazen angrily told Sipa to get out of his line of fire. Gay immediately retorted, then make sure you don't miss your shots. Although they argued, they still coordinated, fighting and retreating, frustrating Ghost. Just then, Mizuki from the maintenance team called to deliver weapons. Gazen locked onto Ghost, fired a smoke round, then ran with Sipa to the designated location. It detected them and quickly pursued. When they both retrieved the weapons, Ghost arrived. Sipa took a defensive stance. Ghost continued to attack first but was blocked by Kempo's timing with the sword. Johan provided sniper support. Ghost parried the attack, then sped towards Johan. Kempo ran to assist but was immediately thrown Johan by Ghost, pinning both to the ground. Gay had anticipated this move and had already jumped high. Kempo switched to its gun and fired down. When Ghost used its arm to defend, that's when Sipa got close enough to it. He chopped off an arm and pinned it down with a stab to the leg. The rest was up to Johan. Gazen switched to armor-piercing rounds, firing continuously at Ghost's head. However, even without a head, it still moved. It jumped backward behind Kempo, then pushed him towards Johan, pinning both to the ground. Then Ghost activated the reactor within itself to self-destruct with both of them. The temperature increased, turning Ghost from black to red. Both Sipa and Gazing couldn't escape and accepted their fate. Just then, Kumai brought artillery to attack Ghost. He aimed for its joints. Once loosened, Kempo and Johan immediately escaped and took cover. Both waited for Ghost to explode, but it just kept heating up without any sign of explosion. Kumai called both of them. He announced that since they had suffered heavy losses in both personnel and weapons, he would return to headquarters to report the situation first. The battlefield cleanup would be left to Gazin and Sipa. The two needed to finish before the Asian forces arrived. When there was no more heat signal, Gazin and Sipa went up to search around. While searching for heat, Sipa found Risa's necklace. He picked it up and burst into tears for her. That night, the Asian forces arrived just as Gazin predicted. Especially this redhead. He could simulate battles just by looking at the traces left from the fight. He was surprised by Sipa's improvement in combat. And when he sensed that Sipa had defeated Ghost, he became even more excited to meet him. Sipa was still devastated after Risa's death. Gazin could understand this, as he had been through it. The redhead of the Asian military took information about all three MA back to his vehicle and simulated them. Kempo was the original. Johan was the sniper. Ghost still had no information. The redhead could devise countermeasures to fight all three. He knew Ghost had removed its limiters to become incredibly powerful like that. Perhaps the AI inside had evolved on its own. The redhead then called his Frenzai to prepare his MI. The next day, while with Gazin, Sipa had thought it over and decided he would no longer join the insurgency because he was afraid of dying. Gazin didn't object this time and said he would report it to Kamai. He said since Sipa wasn't joining anymore, he couldn't pilot Kempo. He told him to hide it somewhere and report its location to him. Before saying goodbye, Sipa told Gazin to take care. He said he decided his own fate, but Sipa cried out that he was terrified of dying. But it was even scarier to see someone he knew die. Gazin told him to stop rambling because cowards weren't allowed to talk about death. After that, Sipa hid Kempo in a nearby stream and left with Gay. When they left the forest, thanks to Guy's data manipulation on Sipa's ID and wanted poster, he wasn't recognized by the civilians. Gay asked him what he planned to do next. He plans to return the necklace to Risa's house, even though he doesn't know if anyone's left. He figures she must still have relatives. Gay had looked up information about the accident at Risa's house. With that, he was able to find her address. Sipa thanked Gay, and the two laughed and joked before heading off together. Elsewhere, two red-clad figures were exchanging information. They frame Japanese citizens as criminals, then deal with them. They use this as an excuse to claim achievements and glory. They see the Japanese as nothing more than pawns. Meanwhile, Sipa, he arrived at the address Gay gave him, only to find the house had been leveled. He thought she might still have relatives, so he planned to ask around. But everyone who saw him seemed to avoid him, like he was a plague. They quickly steered clear. As he stood there, confused, a little girl approached and asked if he was Risa's friend. Then, an older man with a dangerous look stepped forward asking, "And who might you be?" Sipa introduced himself and presented Risa's necklace. Seeing this, the man led him away. The man explained that Risa's house had been destroyed by the Asian forces. All her relatives were gone. Risa was rumored to have joined the rebel army. This was an order from the newly appointed governor's representative. Others suffered the same fate. Even their relatives were targeted. It was nothing short of oppression. The man then took him to a late-night eatery. There, he met a group of young people, Risa's childhood friends according to the man. The man had called them here to hear news about her. They happily chatted and laughed, sharing memories of Risa, unaware of the truth. But in the end, he had to tell them. Everyone was shocked by the news. Some couldn't hold back their tears. After all, she was a very kind person, always helping others, true to her nature. They then asked Sipa what he planned to do next. Since he didn't know where Risa's relatives were, he intended to place the necklace at her family's grave. He asked for its location, and everyone fell silent. The proprietress finally spoke, saying she knew where it was. Since it was in the mountains and would take a long time, she suggested he stay for a night. Sipa started to decline, but everyone wanted him to stay. They even decided to visit Risa's family grave together. They then threw a hot pot party for Sipa. While he was still hesitating, the man convinced him to stay. After the meal, Nose and his daughter headed home. As they talked and crossed the street during a green light, suddenly, the governor's car stopped in front of them. He rolled down the window and blamed Nose. His clothes were dirty because of Nose. Redhead had received the new MI model. He was extremely excited and couldn't wait to try it out and capture Kempo and Ghost. Speaking of Ghost, it was hiding in a cave, repairing itself. People started buzzing about the disappearance of Nose and his daughter. They went to his house and found all his belongings moved out. Everything was strangely suspicious. Someone in the group spoke up. He said he'd heard that if the new governor targeted someone, that person would disappear overnight. These people all had one characteristic: anti-establishment ideas. Rumor had it they'd be sent to the avenue. This was nothing short of human trafficking. Gay and Sipa had heard the whole story, and Gay confirmed that what this older brother said was true. Gay analyzed that it had checked the surrounding cameras from last night until today, and since no military vehicles had left the city, it meant Nose hadn't been sold yet. But Sipa still didn't have enough credibility for them to trust him. So Gay picked out a random guy and revealed his deepest secret. They started to trust him and said they would go to the governor to demand Nose's release. Action sound. He had announced Sipa's choice. Thank you for your sympathy. Also, he mentioned that upon returning to headquarters, he would have a new teammate, a pilot who possessed the designs from Kempo. Back at the governor's place, He was discussing with Chief Inspector Chen. They would sell Nose into forced labor. As for his daughter, they would sell her to perverts. Just then, a report came in that Japanese people were gathering at the gate. Sipa, however, chose to stay at the eatery. At this point, news arrived that the protesting group had all been arrested. They were charged with opposing the government and taken away. They also found that the dispatch vehicles were military transports. The vehicles were heading to houses to clear out those about to be sold. But Gay told Sipa to leave quickly because they were coming. The proprietress gave Sipa the location of a part of Risa's house and asked him to send her regards. As for the situation here, they would handle it themselves. He was then thrown outside before the army arrived. After that, Nosa's entire group was arrested. They paraded the people through the street, then declared they would execute them all for opposing the government. Sipa watched on his phone, heartbroken for everyone. Someone was even shot by the governor without cause. Sipa burst into tears, realizing how cowardly and timid he was, always running away and abandoning those who helped him. Gay spoke up. If you hate yourself, why not change to become a better version? It will always be here to help you. And then he regained his resolve. From deep within the springs, Kempo's eyes lit up brightly. That afternoon, as everyone was about to be executed, as the rifles pointed at them, a tremor caused everyone to stop. Kempo jumped out, using his shield to protect everyone. The governor ordered an attack, but these guys were too weak to even be called a Mai. Sipa grabbed one, then hurled it at another, disabling both. Then he brought Kempo's fist close to the governor, striking fear into him. This is absolute power. He trembled, begging for mercy. Gay had broadcast information about his illegal human trafficking to the entire world. Redhead saw it and started laughing hysterically, shouting bravo, repeatedly. Sipa warned him if he ever laid a hand on the Japanese again, he'd visit his home every night. With that, he left. Nose and his daughter were also freed by the people. Early in the morning, Sipa arrived where Gassi was waiting. He also left Risa's belongings at a part of her family's plot. Long ago, in a pottery village, a little girl named Shin followed her grandfather, creating amazing products. Under his hands, everything was crafted with exquisite detail. But then one day, the Asian army came to reclaim her family's land and workshop. They wouldn't allow her family to refuse. So her grandfather watched as the workshop he had built his entire life was smashed to pieces. From then on, he stopped making pottery. Seeing him like that, little Shin promised her grandfather that one day, she would restore the workshop for their family. Back to the present. Both Yuhan and Kempo were in a state of disrepair in several critical parts. Both Gay and Kei also needed to recharge their batteries to function properly. Gassi contacted Mizuki. She really wanted to help, but because she was dodging Asian forces while heading back to headquarters, she couldn't do much. She only provided the locations of the parts needed for both of them to repair themselves. Before she left, Sipa asked Gassi what to do next, and he took him to siphon electricity to charge the two A's. After they finished charging them and let them rest, Gassi and Sipa went into the city to find a place to stay. At the hotel, Sipa, despite being from the city, was a bit overwhelmed as it was his first time here. So Gassi called him a country bumpkin. He tried to retort, but Gassi told him to stop drawing attention. After checking in, they headed to their room. Gay advised them both to take a bath because they smelled terrible. Sipa was surprised that an AI could sense smells. Gay said she didn't need to. One only had to look around to know. Everyone held their noses when standing near the two. So as soon as they entered the room, the two scrubbed themselves clean. After bathing, they went to eat together. Gassi received a notification from Mizuki that the parts had been sent, so they would start repairs tomorrow. With that, Sipa happily began to eat. He noticed Gassi wasn't eating vegetables and immediately asked about it. But Kei said Gassi was a picky eater, which made Sipa tease him. Then Gassi snapped back at him. Sipa apologized, not knowing he disliked it. He hadn't had friends before, so he didn't know how to interact. Kei and Gay told him not to worry. Gassi was just trying to act tough to hide his weakness. The three then started bickering. Meanwhile, the European army, after hearing Sipa's provocation and taking a significant hit to their economy and reputation, they began preparing their military to confront him. He hoped this battlefield flower would bloom in blood and gunpowder. Gassi and Sipa set off to get the parts. On the bus ride, Gassi told Sipa to look down at the city of Japan, now dominated. The people suffered oppression and poverty. He told him that one day, he would reclaim this place. Afterward, they both went to a pub where members of the rebel army worked. When Gassi gave the correct password, the owner handed them the goods. The owner also placed his hope in Sipa after hearing his speech. Not long after they left, as they walked and talked about responsibility, a distant explosion suddenly echoed. At the gate, the European army brazenly attacked the Asian forces sector with a Mai. Asia retaliated, but it was negligible. Gassi and Sipa blended into the evacuating crowd to observe the situation. The Oceanian forces fired indiscriminately, disregarding civilians. The two boys arrived at the evacuation point. Gassi observed that the situation was very difficult for the Asian forces, and they might stop evacuating civilians to focus on defense. Sipa couldn't accept it and wanted to do something. Gay immediately met his request. They would hack into people's devices and guide them to evacuate. After that, Kei and Gay hacked into all the city's display screens, guiding citizens along the correct paths. However, it still wouldn't be fast enough because the Oceanian forces were attacking too quickly. Sipa wanted to use Kempo for support, but Gassi said that if they went to get it and came back, no one would be left alive. The Asian commander also abandoned these refugees. He believed that if Oceania killed civilians, public opinion would turn against them. The villagers wanted to leave the housing area but were blocked by Asian soldiers. Just then, an Asian Amai's body was thrown, destroying a building and causing panic. After that, the Oceanian forces advanced towards them step by step. Just then, another Amai appeared. It moved at incredibly high speed. In no time, it was in the middle of the Oceanian army's formation. Then this Amai introduced itself as Tham Thong, acting in the name of justice. After saying that, Tham Thong swiftly sliced an Amai in half. Then it leaped high and slashed down, using the corpse of the fallen one as a shield. It used a piercing attack to take down 3 Oceanian Amai. After that, Tham Thong turned its attention to the Asian forces. 1 sweep, 3 kills. Then, to the surprise of both commanders, Tham Thong jumped incredibly high and flew to take down an artillery Amai. Then it flew around the city, destroying any Amai it saw. The maps of both commanders were filled with red dots, signaling their forces were being annihilated. It felt like its power had reached 70%, forcing the Oceanian forces to retreat quickly. Sipa and Gassi watched, their mouths agape. Just then, Gay announced that it was their new teammate. News of a gathering arrived, so they both left. In a forest one afternoon, Gassi and Sipa ventured deep inside and found Tham Thong. Sipa greeted it first, but the AI interrupted. It called itself Angelo. With an arrogant tone, it expressed contempt for male pilots, and even ordered them both to bow in thanks for being saved. After a tirade against Gassi and Sipa, it finally showed them the princess, who would be their pilot and teammate, and that was Shin. She stepped down from Tham Thong without a word, then suddenly burst into tears. Afterward, the 3 were transported to a nearby IATA base. Shin apologized for greeting them with tears. She introduced herself and chatted with Sipa. Gassi remained cool and reserved, speaking little. According to Shin, that morning's battle was her first real combat experience. Originally, she was just a maintenance worker for IATA. Then Angelo suddenly appeared and told her to become a pilot, so she immediately agreed. It was very confident in its ability to judge people. But Gay and Kay teased that Angelo was just a lady killer. The 3 then started bickering noisily, giving Gassi a terrible headache. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Redhead Hattie and his friend met with the commander. He called them both in because Ghost's location had been identified. According to information, Ghost being an unmanned AI machine with independent thought was certain. The person behind it remained a mystery. Ghost had taken down North American, Asian, European, and even Oceanian forces. High-ranking leaders desperately wanted to possess Ghost to gain an advantage in the war. His boss told them to find it, and if possible, destroy Ghost to prevent it from falling into other countries' hands. After the official business, it was time for personal matters. This boss turned out to be Hattie's father. He reminded his son to visit home during the holidays. His mother was really looking forward to seeing him. Hattie agreed and left. Though he said so, while in the car, his friend knew Hattie would cram work into the holidays. He reluctantly agreed, as there were indeed many things he needed to complete. Afterward, Hattie stopped by his favorite bakery. The owner even gave him something extra, because he knew the North American Alliance was trying to restore Japan. Even so, the operational control still belonged to the North American Army. Even if they regained autonomy, the command center would still be North American. Gradually, the entire country of Japan would become a colony. He didn't want the people to depend on other countries, but that they should rise up and claim what belonged to them. After eating the pastry, they continued moving. Hattie confided that it wasn't that he didn't want to go home, because he was adopted, and the other children in the house were too. Hattie couldn't get along with them. He could hardly find anything that interested him, until he was introduced to the military environment. The first time he saw Mai, he chose the military path. Finishing his story was also when they arrived at the mission area. Back to Sipa's group, they had arrived at a luxury hotel to rest. Only now, Sipa questioned why their 3 Amai were different from the Amai in the military. Angelo explained that there was a company called Brenzon. They were supporting the Japanese rebel organizations. Although officially headquartered in Europe, it was just a company. It's unclear if the company has any ulterior motives, but for now, they're fine. As for AIs like them, they were developed by an external agency, called ILS, short for Intelligence Learning System, an active learning system. Though Gay seems to be a special case, sharing the same source code as Kay and Angelo, but was sent by someone to the Oceanian region. In short, they are still brothers. Upon returning to the room, Sipa asked Gay if it wondered why it was sent there, but it didn't care, as it liked its current circumstances. Back at Hattie's location, he met two people, Roger and Sophie. They would assist him in eliminating Ghost. However, Sophie voiced her opposition to this operation, because she believed piloting Amai was not as safe as using unmanned Amai. Hattie explained to his subordinate that if they did that, they would need an entire platoon. But with Asian and Oceanian forces still lurking, they couldn't afford it. So Hattie assembled elite individuals to capture Ghost. And if she was chosen, it meant she was very capable. Now they just needed to follow his orders, and Ghost would be nothing more than an ordinary Amai. If not, he wasn't so sure. The next day, Sipa's group continued their journey back to headquarters. In the sky at this moment, Hattie's team was also beginning their operation. Ghost sensed all four from the cave. It immediately launched to the surface, and Hattie also landed right on its position. Ghost continued to initiate. It charged to attack. Hattie had his team split up and attack from multiple directions. This tactic proved very effective, as Ghost was having trouble handling it. It had never fought against a formation of all piloted machines. They needed to destroy it before Ghost could adapt to this fighting style. However, it was too late. Ghost focused solely on Hattie's friend, forcing him to struggle backward. When Roger tried to assist, it blocked the attack, then threw Hattie's friend at him. The military fired missiles from outside. Ghost emitted jamming signals, deflecting the missiles. Roger continued to attack and was caught by Ghost. From its back, a third arm grew out. The pilot had to sacrifice an arm to escape. Ghost had now fully adapted to Hattie's tactics and was about to crush him. Suddenly, Gay sensed something was off. Besides Sipa, the other two, and the A's couldn't sense it. He thought he was imagining it, so he dismissed it. Back to Ghost. It used its chained fingers to attack the pilots directly. And then, while Roger wasn't paying attention, a finger killed him from the inside. Unable to grieve for too long, Hattie quickly calculated an attack strategy. Then he and the other two charged forward. Sophie and his friend moved faster to launch a diversionary attack on Ghost. However, both were tied up by the wires it had spun from the ground. Despite that, Hattie pressed on. When it opened fire, he dodged the blast. Then he bounced back to shoot its arm joint, but it covered itself and tried to attack him. However, a bullet deflected its leg joint. That was from Roger. Though he was dead, the AI was still operational and completing its mission. Then Hattie finished it with a bullet straight through the core. It collapsed. However, just a few seconds later, it escaped with the military aircraft. Hattie was furious, determined to kill it. Meanwhile, Sipa's group, they had arrived at headquarters and met Udo, the representative of IATA. He was glad all three arrived safely, but still had a task for them immediately. Someone wanted to meet the three of them. It was the intermediary between the Branjone company and their organization. He introduced himself as Gobel. He proposed doing business based on war. Everyone sat down to talk. Gobel happily suggested a long-term partnership. As long as there was war, the company would do business. He was also generous with funding when they needed it. Additionally, Gobel brought new equipment for Mai. After that, he led them to see a pair of armored grenade launchers for Johan, and many other things for Kempo and Tham Thong. Then Udo received a call from someone and drove Sipa's group. They arrived at a village deep in the forest. Then the group entered the house of a man named Yuzi, a veteran real estate agent currently living temporarily in this village. He showed them his family's data. Currently, 9 people live here. However, a week ago, they couldn't use electricity or water. While listening, a little girl suddenly ran up and hugged Gassi, calling him daddy, surprising everyone. Yuzi asked for their understanding, as the little girl had lost her father at a young age. Back to the main issue. Currently, the villagers were struggling to survive after the water and electricity outage. Udo asked why everyone chose to stay here instead of leaving. He explained that their town was engulfed in war. They had moved to a refugee camp, but then that place also closed, forcing them to return home. Others shared similar circumstances. They ended up displaced to this remote village. Though difficult, the war wouldn't reach here. They traded hardship for safety. After listening, Udo said his side would help as much as possible. Then he convinced everyone to stay. Sipa expressed admiration for Udo's kindness. Gassi said that IATA wasn't just a rebel army. They also helped fellow countrymen in need. What was essential for restoring the country was gaining the trust of the people. The next day, it rained. Everyone gathered to discuss solutions for the village's problems. To ensure their living conditions, they needed to fix the issues with water and food. Gassi proposed drilling a well for water, then building a water wheel to generate electricity and cultivating the land for farming. Everyone then started working. Sipa and a few others stripped machinery from old cars, and Udo asked Gobel to sponsor some things. He agreed, as there was still money to be made. Everyone worked hard. The music group, the well-digging group, the farming group. By evening, everyone sat down together to eat and drink. Seeing the children happy put Sipa at ease. The next day, everyone continued working. While stacking wood, Sipa was called away by Shin. The two arrived at a hut on the mountain. There was a kiln there. She wanted to fix it. If they succeeded, they could make bread, pizza, and even pottery. Shin also recounted that her family had a tradition of pottery making. Hearing this, Sipa offered to help her. Afterward, the two began the task of rebuilding the kiln. 2 children came looking. They were curious, so Shin invited them to join. Day by day, as everyone slowly completed their tasks, Sipa's group also finished the kiln. They tested it out. Under Shin's guidance, Sipa and the 2 children made many items like cups and plates. Now they just needed to fire and paint them, then they'd be ready to use. Gassi had brought in the equipment. Now all that was needed was for the well to flow. The water wheel had also started operating to provide electricity. However, Gay said this wouldn't be enough for the villagers. Gassi's group was also facing a problem as they hit hard rock, and predicted the rock layer to be 2 meters thick. It would be very difficult to penetrate. Yet, if they succeeded, Angelo said water would flow out. With a volume of 100 liters per day, it would be enough for the villagers. Mizuki had proposed a solution. The following days, everyone continued to work. The water wheel was upgraded to generate more electricity. Even so, Gay only rated the power as acceptable. At this moment, Gay called both of them to the well. Mizuki had designed a device combining lasers and piercing stakes. First, they would use the laser to melt the rock layer. Then, they would fire the piercing stake. Since Gay had suggested this idea, it made Sipa do it, threatening to be angry if he didn't. Having no choice, he had to step up. Then, under the guidance of the 3 A's, Sipa aimed the laser at the position. Now just press that lever and it's done. However, Gay told him he had to shout the skill name first. Indulging it, Sipa yelled super penetration drill, then pressed it. In an instant, the underground water spring burst forth. After that, they utilized the force of the water to speed up the rotation of the water wheel, providing an abundant power source. The lights were turned on. Everything was gradually getting better. The villagers bowed in thanks to everyone. Returning from their trip, Sipa's group of 3, Gassi and Shin, were assigned the task of buying supplies for the IATA members. They had to do this in secret. Looking at the long list, Sipa wondered when they would ever finish. Just then, an acquaintance recognized Gassi. It was you. The group went to the park to talk. Sipa was surprised Gassi still had family, and this was the first time he'd seen him smile like that. Gay told them more. You once worked at IATA headquarters with his parents, but after both of them sacrificed themselves fighting the Asian forces, Gassi's father adopted you, and Gassi cherished you like an older brother. When you suddenly left the organization, it made Gassi very sad for a while. After a long conversation, it was time for you to leave. The two exchanged contact information, then you left first. Upon returning to headquarters, Gassi took out a picture of him with his father and you to look at. Some old memories came back. At that time, the two brothers accidentally got lost in the mountains. Gassi was very scared but was reassured by you. Even though they weren't blood relatives, he always protected Gassi. Memories that could never fade from Gassi's mind. Sipa's group tested the new equipment. When everything checked out, Gassi received a message from you. He was very happy. That is until you invited Sipa and Shin along. And he took all 3 to the Japanese city he had founded. Everyone here was Japanese. There was no one from the Asian cooperatives area. Although unofficial, there were 3,482 residents here, equivalent to a small town. Self-governance was decided by the Japanese people. And it didn't stop there, as the district chief of this autonomous region was you himself. Everyone adored you. The only thing he wanted was to see the carefree smiles of the children. He wanted to protect all of them. The reason he left IATA was also for this, because his direction and the organizations were different. Managing this autonomous region was also very difficult, because every day he had to negotiate with the Asian forces instead of fighting like IATA. He hoped that in the future, the city would expand even further. Afterward, it was time, so you left, giving the 3 freedom to explore. They hadn't walked long before the locals gave them many gifts, knowing they were used friends. Sipa and Shin went up a high hill to admire the city, while Gassi went to meet his brother. After the meeting, you didn't beat around the bush and went straight to the point. He wanted his younger brother to leave IATA and join him in the city. Due to population limits, the number of residents here could not increase. He could ask the Asian forces for an exception for Gassi. He wanted his brother to stop wielding a gun and live peacefully here. Gassi couldn't answer yet, so he asked for time to think. He then returned to headquarters. While he was thinking, Gobel approached and revealed the truth to Gassi. Since losing Gassi would affect the company's revenue, he told him that you was a spy for the Asian forces. Of course, whether Gassi believed it was up to him. However, Gobel told them that information was also a commodity, so there was no need to sugarcoat it. And besides, one only needed to think a little to know how the Asian forces could allow Gassi's brother to establish such a large autonomous zone. Therefore, you would act as their pawn to create that city, seizing land, leaking information, pointing out rebel elements, sometimes even blackmail. The brother Gassi cherished was protecting the Japanese by selling out the Japanese. If Gassi keeps in touch with you, Yada's information will eventually be leaked. Losing one pilot would be a major blow to Gopal's company. And this time, it's 3 pilots. He advised Gassi to think carefully, to avoid unnecessary severe consequences. If he still doesn't believe him, Gassi can check. After hearing that, he left. In the dark room, Gasson told Ken to not mention this to anyone. He remembered when he lost his rank. He just sat there, saying nothing, lost in thought. It was you who came to comfort him. Not believing his brother was that kind of person, Gassi secretly returned to the city the next day to investigate. It only took a few rounds for him to notice many things were wrong. Supplies from medical to essential needs were severely lacking. The surrounding residents complained nonstop. Continuing on, Gassi saw an Asian military vehicle. It was heading towards Yu's office. As expected, they were using the transport of essential goods to make EU provide information. Even though it was clearly not part of the agreement, he had no choice but to comply. Gassi witnessed everything through his camera. After the Asian troops left, Yu thought for a moment, then called Gassi. The two later met outside the autonomous zone and went to headquarters. Yu met Kamui and Adu. He revealed everything about his collaboration with the Asian military to establish the autonomous zone, and they were trying to extract information from him to plan Yada's eradication. Asia might use the autonomous zone as a base, so he advised them to withdraw their troops from there. After revealing everything, he returned before Asia could grow suspicious. He declined Adu's invitation to stay. However, unexpectedly, Yu's car wouldn't start. The mechanic checked it and said it would take a day to fix, so he told Yu to stay the night. So he no longer stood on ceremony. And late at night, when everyone was asleep, Yu secretly copied Yada's data. When he tried to sneak out, Gassi stopped him. The two brothers began to argue. Yu wanted to protect his people. He didn't want them to die. But Gassi couldn't sacrifice his organization. The brothers argued, and Yu decided to turn away. Gassi aimed his gun at his brother, but then he couldn't pull the trigger. The following days, 3 pilots adrift at sea met to Oku, an insurgent organization like theirs. The 3 pilots split up, heading in a different direction from Adu and Kamai. The day before, they had discussed their route with Gobel. He said they could meet the Tohoku organization, as they were also a Japanese revivalist group, but they were being hunted by the Eurasian military. Soon after, they spotted their destination, the island where the Tohoku organization was hiding. Where inside, they were being attacked by the Eurasian military. Everyone was fighting back desperately as the Eurasian forces used only ami to suppress the nation. Just then, Sipa's group arrived to assist. Gassi sniped from a distance, taking down numerous targets. Tam Thong and Kembu began to fly, jump, slash, and destroy the ami. However, the enemy was still too numerous, so Gassi fired smoke bombs and retreated. Lieutenant Zellernoy, the commander of this operation, witnessed everything. He smirked, saying he would personally join the battle next time. Once they escaped, they met Kono, their commander. He thanked the three for their help. Sipa looked around and saw very few people to call an organization. Kono explained that they used to have many, but ever since Zellernoy took command of the front, he had heavily invested in a large number of ami to relentlessly pursue and eradicate the Tohoku organization. Kono's next plan was to attack the east side of this island. Their faction was there for reunification. Gassi said that to increase the chance of success, he needed to scan the surrounding area to understand the terrain. After that, the three split up to scout. They each had their own escorts. As they climbed higher, Sipa saw several strange light columns. According to his escort, they were enemy signal devices. Many were placed around. They didn't detect humans, only ami. And when a signal was turned off, it would be considered a target detection. Sipa observed and thought he would take advantage of that. As for Zellernoy, he was soaking himself, enjoying himself before going out to play. His secretary protested, saying they were sure to win, so why reveal himself? But Zellernoy said he liked it that way, and he would defeat Sipa's group. Sipa was now in position with Gasson and Jin. As the fog grew thicker, Zellernoy boarded his ami and began the sweep operation. He ordered indiscriminate shelling into the forest. After detecting Sipa's group moving, they continued to shell their position. Gasson deployed smoke bombs to jam the signals, but Zellernoy activated the signal pillars. After seeing all three on the map, they continuously fired, cornering Sipa's group. However, just as they had them pinned, the signal suddenly disappeared. Gasson, from outside, shot down the bridge, bringing down numerous targets, and Tham Thong flew out from both sides, eliminating more targets. Hacking into their system was too easy to pinpoint their location. After that, the three used the fog to conceal themselves. After dealing with the small fry, they headed straight for Zellernoy. Kembu and Gassi eagerly rushed forward to fight him, while Ken, from behind, quietly shot down enemies behind Zellernoy. Kempo's blade clashed with him first. When Tham Thong flew in to assist, he was shot back and had to dodge. Zellernoy aimed to shoot Kempo, but Tham Thong circled back and slashed his gun, damaging it. Even though he was being attacked from the sides, he still managed to fight back. His blade was too tough to be cut, but while fighting, his ami stopped moving. Gassi decided to retreat. There was no need to kill him. While Zellernoy watched, seething. This was nothing short of an insult to a noble like him. At this moment, the blade and armor on the ami shattered. Back to Sipa's group. After Kono's group reunited with the remaining forces, they said their goodbyes. The three then regrouped with Kamui's team. After this trip, Gassi had become more positive. Not long after, Sipa's group met the maintenance team again. But before handing them over for maintenance, Sipa asked to bathe Kembu first, as it was quite dirty. At Adu's place, somehow, Gobel contacted him and proposed an interface. He hid his identity, only saying he was a merchant, and what he sold was information. The location of the secret meeting. To prove his credibility, Gobel revealed all of Adu's information. Sophia and Adu's friends. He asked Gobel the price, and he said no money was needed. He considered this an investment in their future relationship. After saying that, he left and sent the information to Adu. He immediately handed it over to intelligence for analysis. He had been informed by the maintenance department about the situation of the three pilots. After hearing that, he gave all three some time off to rest. After ending the call, Adu was informed he had a visitor. What about the pilot group? They were all talking about the future while working on their MI. What would they do after Japan was restored? Jin wanted to rebuild the pottery workshop at home. As for Gassi, he still had to avenge his father. Hearing that, Sipa promised to help him take down Ghost. Jin also wanted to help. Gassi didn't answer, but a smile touched his lips. Zellernoy, after being outsmarted by a bunch of kids, he went back to report to his commander and requested to be transferred to the IATA organization pursuit team. His superior agreed to the request. Meanwhile, Adu met Kamui again. He showed Adu some photos of Asian troops mysteriously wounded. They might have been attacked by foreign forces. Putting that aside, Adu also showed Kamui the current map of Japan. It had been divided among four powers. If they continued their operations, the territories controlled by IATA would surely expand in the future. Nominally, it belonged to the North American Alliance, but the autonomy belonged to Japan. But there was something that excited Adu very much. That during the entire time the four powers occupied Japan, they never fought each other to expand their territories. But that has changed recently, due to an extremely large trigger, creating a seismic, transformative change. The original MI, more precisely, the self-evolving AI within Kenbu. Ghost also had a similar AI, even superior to Ken. The more Adu thought about it, the more he wanted to possess it. He decided to cooperate with Gobel. After all, it was mutually beneficial. A moment later, information arrived from intelligence. With 90% accuracy, Ghost was still in the Asian Cooperative's territory. Since it had adapted to old tactics, Adu needed to prepare a different approach to fight it. He asked Sophia if intelligence had located Sipa's group yet. She said they had lost track long ago, and based on speculation, there were many possible directions. After thinking for a moment, Adu took Zai and Sophia out for some fresh air. As for Sipa, after he and Mizuru maintained Kembu, Heejin, and Gassen went to the market in disguise. Upon arrival, the group split up to shop. Sipa felt a bit overwhelmed in such a crowded place. Accidentally, he bumped into Adu. Sipa apologized and hurried away, but Adu recognized his voice from before, so he sent Zai to follow and cross-reference his voice. By the time they finished shopping, it was already evening. At this moment, Mizuru found them and invited the whole group to take a relaxing hot spring bath. Upon arrival, they split into male and female sections. Sipa was surprised to meet Adu here again. Without preamble, he revealed himself as part of the North American military. Then he spoke of his mission to capture Ghost, but it got away alive. He then revealed Ghost's current location. This struck a chord with Gassi. Before either of them could question it, Adu left with Zai. On the women's side, Sophia also announced something similar. Ghost had attacked the Asian military base again, causing severe damage. The next day, Sipa's group informed Adu of Ghost and Adu's locations. Gassi was eager to leave immediately and avenge his father. Sipa would also help him, as he needed to avenge Risa. However, Adu hoped they would both be patient and wait until this information was verified. From that moment on, Gassi plunged into training. After 2 days, the information was verified. Ghost was in Okinoshima. It had captured the Asian military's strongholds there. They had to retreat to the shore to set up defenses in case Ghost attacked the mainland. Currently, Ghost was dormant for repairs, and Ken said there were Japanese people on Okinoshima. The temple soldiers had abandoned them. Now, defeating Ghost was directly linked to protecting the people and nation of Japan. Adu then assigned the mission to rescue the civilians and defeat Ghost to the 3 of them. The plan involved 2 teams. Team A would be the civilian evacuation team, and Team B, consisting of the 3 pilots, would ambush where Ghost was supposedly dormant. After agreeing on the tasks, everyone split up to work. The following days, Team A mobilized the islanders for evacuation. Team B, meanwhile, actively trained for combat. Soon enough, it was time for the plan to begin. That very night, many ships moved towards Okinoshima. Team A began moving ashore and evacuating civilians onto the boats. Team B advanced onto the island, heading towards Ghost's location. Adu, meanwhile, sat back, like a fisherman benefiting from the struggle. Ghost had awakened, though no one knew when. It began to hunt down the remnants of the Asian military. It destroyed the MI, then targeted the commander who had once fought Sipa. Just then, Sipa's group arrived and attacked it. The 3 lured away to another location for their assault. As expected, Inuyasha wasn't used to its fighting style, so Ghost constantly closed in on her. Kembu came to her rescue. Gassi switched to tactic B. The 3 lured it to an open area. Thong flew high, providing support from above. Kembu returned to fight Ghost. However, it had evolved to attack with 4 arms, surprising Sipa and making him lose his advantage. Johan immediately fired in support, making it focus on both of them. Thong fired an electric net, trapping it. Johan immediately fired to finish it off, but Ghost used wires on its feet to counterattack and break the net. It lunged, grabbing Johan by the head. Kembu knocked its hand away, and Thong once again fired an electric net. The 3 retreated, using their tactics again. Ghost's power had evolved incredibly fast in a short amount of time, evolving extremely quickly. Speaking of evolution, Sipa thought of something. Ghost had caught up from behind. Sipa told Gassi to execute Tactic A. Kembu lured it to chase him to the mountaintop. Ken found the ammo depot and lured it inside. Just as Thong intercepted it, Jin fired 2 layers of nets, pinning it inside the ammo depot. Then Ken closed the depot. From afar, Gassi took aim. The bullet fired, flew into the ammo barrel, creating a chain reaction that blew up an entire area. However, before they could rejoice, Ghost still stood firm amidst the flames. Even so, they weren't disheartened and charged together. But Kembu was punched away, and Thong was thrown aside like a toy. Gassi told both of them to coordinate their attacks like in sparring. Adu was observing the battle from afar. No matter who won this battle, he would benefit. If Sipa won, the mission to kill Ghost would be complete. If Ghost won, he would collect Ken for research. Meanwhile, Team A successfully evacuated the civilians. They even captured the remnants of the Asian army. Back to the battle. The 3 were still coordinating smoothly, but even taking damage, Ghost was still incredibly powerful. It flew over and destroyed Johan's gun, preventing him from sniping any further. Ken suspected this wasn't an AI fighting on its own anymore, but rather how to pilot. Even with 3 against 1, the win rate was still 50%, and it was steadily decreasing. Just then, Kono called, asking the 3 to retreat, as they had already achieved half of their plan. But Sipa refused, knowing Ghost wouldn't spare them. He said he would return alive soon, so he told Kono not to worry. Hearing that, Kono said he would send more reinforcements. After that, the 3 attacked together again. Ghost punched Kembu away and pinned Thong to the ground. It then broke Thong's arm and grabbed Johan's leg. Jin only managed to pull Gassi away. The 2 successfully hid. Meanwhile, Kembu observed Ghost from afar. They used thermal cameras and discovered the power source it used was in its tail. This explained why it could handle 3 of them without expending energy. While they did, that was its weakness. If it maintained high temperatures without dissipating heat internally, it would eventually overheat. The 3 then regrouped, sharing energy with each other. Johan and Themthong transferred all their energy to Kembu so Sipa could deal with Ghost. Kembu then continued to fight Ghost. Themthong and Johan moved into attack positions. Sipa continued to lure Ghost into the Asian military's AMI warehouse to attack. It lunged into the warehouse, then controlled the AMI to fire at Sipa. But Kembu leaped out and detonated the warehouse. Of course, it still stood tall. At this moment, there was an announcement that the 2 were in position. However, Kembu was gradually losing ground. At this point, Ken had no choice but to break his limits. Only this way could he defeat Ghost. Without hesitation, he agreed. Indeed, after breaking his limits, Kembu was faster, and in an instant, he sliced off one of Ghost's arms. The 2 fought on equal terms. Kembu lured Ghost into the burning area. Sipa and Ken coordinated, punching Ghost, giving it almost no chance to fight back. When he destroyed another of its arms, Themthong leaped down and beheaded Ghost. Johan, from afar, destroyed its energy tail. As Ghost collapsed, Kembu flew in to deliver the finishing blow. However, the sword broke, and Kembu's entire system overloaded. At the same time, Ghost also overloaded and caught fire. In just a few minutes, it would overheat and explode. However, Ghost plunged into the sea to cool down. To prevent that from happening, Kembu stood to block it. Despite knowing he would die with it, he couldn't let something similar happen to Risa. And to avenge Gassi's father, Sipa decided to sacrifice himself. He would die to protect everyone he loved. In that crucial moment, Sipa and Ken had their last conversation. No matter what happened, they would go together to the ends of the earth. After saying that, Ken lost connection. Sipa thanked it for showing him that the world still held many wonderful things. The 2 then exploded with Ghost. Team A successfully evacuated the civilians. The atmosphere became somber when there was an announcement that a pilot had lost signal. After their prank, when they went to check, nothing remained. But they couldn't grieve for long, as they still had a mission to complete. Jin and Gassi bid Sipa farewell and left. Meanwhile, Adu salvaged some fragments of Ghost. More astonishingly, its AI was still intact. Part 1 of the anime ends here.